What's going on, guys? I guess welcome back to the show or whatever. It's balmy 80 plus degrees on Saturday here in South Carolina. Started raining, so it's muggy as anything. So, I've often said when the news media all get together and start showing the same, quote, big story, it's time to start paying attention and looking for what they're not telling you. Well, as it turns out, it was announced Wednesday or Thursday that the former president of ABC was going to be controlling the primetime airing of the January 6th riots, or January 6th hearing, whatever. I still want to go. I want them to investigate May 29th when DC was burning for BLM and Antifa riots, but hey, what do I know, right? So you ask yourself, ABC, NBC, CNN, and all these other news media outlets for 2 hours are airing last night this hearing. Everything's being pushed to this hearing, or at least last night everything was. So the question is, what's not being talked about? Biden got up on the podium, I believe it was yesterday, maybe it was Thursday. He was supposed to talk about inflation, but instead he talked about the hearings. Sorry, Abby's getting nervous. We've got thunder rolling now. Well, I believe it was through an executive order. Biden has now increased the amount of ethanol required in fuel production, gasoline. Problem with that is ethanol's not good for engines, number one. Number two, doing a little bit of research and whatnot, I found out earlier today it takes 22 pounds of corn to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. That's a lot of corn. There was a study back in 2008 that was released. The results of a study talked about that when they started adding ethanol, it was bad for the environment. They sold us on ethanol reducing greenhouse emissions from the exhaust of cars. Turns out it doesn't do that. Bad for your motor. Breaks down the internals of it. Not only that, but your prices for just about every food product, beef, meat, pork, chicken, wheat, bread products, like cereals, like cornflakes and things, all of that went up. Why? Because corn is one of the most used ingredients for feed and farm animals. There's less corn to go around because more of it's being used to supplement fuel. Guess what's going to happen again? We've already got food shortages. Now we're going to have even less corn available to eat. The price of feed for farm animals and domesticated animals is going to go up. Yes, corn's even used in dog food and cat food. Sorry, still working on trying to get off the cigarettes. No nicotine vape, but anyway. So food prices are already going up. Food shortages have already started. Some say last summer there were orders from the government for farmers to destroy a certain number of crops, well, American farmers. Saw some of the video, snippets of letters and whatnot. It's plausible. I'm not saying it happened, although back then I was saying it. Not saying it happened. It's plausible. We have a fertilizer shortage because of the war in Ukraine. Some kind of urea chemical, something or other, is used in both fertilizer, but it's also required in diesel motors and 18-wheelers that we use to transport our products and services all across the U.S. Well, there's a urea shortage. Maybe it's different, but in medical terms, urea refers to urine. I don't know. That was the first thing I thought. But anyway, it's one of the main ingredients in fertilizers, and it's also one of the main ingredients in whatever this urea something compound is that 18-wheelers, drivers and companies of 18-wheelers and other diesel motors are supposed to use, because it reduces the lead as well as other CO2 emissions from their exhaust. Came about with this clean diesel thing that we were hearing about several years ago that turned out really wasn't all that clean. But anyway. So now we have, with lack of fertilizer, fall crops are going to be far less available, as well as far less plentiful. Then you add into the fact that they're now taking corn away because more of it's being required to be put into gasoline production and gasoline for cars. Prices are continuing to go up. Fuel prices themselves are continuing to go up. Across the nation, supposedly they hit $5 or went over $5 yesterday. They're almost $10 a gallon in Texas. I want to say part of New Jersey. They're like $8 or $9 in New York. I know here they're well over $4.50. No, actually, I drove by the gas station yesterday. They're like over $4.60 something a gallon, and we've got some of the cheapest prices in the country. But fuel prices going up are going to drive up the price of food and other products as well, because when fuel prices go up, there's either less trucks on the road to transport, or to keep that same number of trucks on the road for transporting, you have to raise the price of food and other products, because they have to factor that price increase in. Prices are going to continue to go up. This isn't good. There's a headline I read today talking about Putin is threatening a nuclear attack on New York. I don't really know why. He's been talking about using nukes in the war with Ukraine and pointing nukes at the U.S. for a while if we get directly involved. Well, guys, I hate to tell you, but we've been directly involved for a while. If you check out my last video, one of the things I talked about was, I believe it was the HARM missile system was supposed to be going over to Ukraine so that they can sink Russia's Black Sea fleet. They were just trying to figure out how to get it over there or get it delivered, as well as have people who know how to use the weapon system train the Ukrainians on how to use it, which I thought was kind of weird. I was like, why aren't we just using it ourselves if that's what we want to do? But whatever. Which again is a very, very bad idea. I think we need to stay out of this. But they've already sent and delivered medium-range ICBMs to Ukraine. Why we sent medium-range ICBMs to Ukraine, I don't really understand. Are we inviting the Ukrainians to fire missiles into Russia for some unknown reason? I mean, I know that Putin has been firing short and medium-range ICBMs into Ukraine. The news has talked about it. Civilian buildings have been destroyed, hit, so on and so forth. They're not exactly the most accurate ICBMs in general, but part of that is because ICBMs are area effect weapons. They're not specific target weapons. They're for like taking out a city block. So why are we giving this to Ukrainians? All we're doing is increasing the war. Actually, I think the fact that we gave $40 billion was stupid. Add that to everything else we've sent them, as well as the fact that Biden's asking for another 800 million, was it? Like 3 days after the approval of the 40 billion, we're at over $56 billion being sent to Ukraine. Is this a loan? Are we going to get the money back? I doubt it. Where's the money coming from? What are we going to do? Print more? Okay, that just means inflation, which is already out of control, goes even further out of control. The only way for inflation to be brought back into control is for the Federal Reserve to increase interest rates. Well, interest rates are already becoming a problem. There's been 2 increases in the last, 3-4 months, maybe 6 months, something like that. Interest rates are already going up. There was a discussion on the podcast that I listened to earlier this morning where they were talking about a lot of your economy experts are saying that next year we're going to have quite the possibility of a collapse, but if not a complete collapse, we're going to have several bubbles that burst, which includes another housing bubble's going to burst. Interest rates are going to continue to soar, inflation's going to continue to soar, the value of the dollar is going to continue to crash. And just like last time, 2008, 2009, those loans that people have are going to start to be called in because the banks aren't going to have any money. They're going to want people to pay those loans off early. How is this benefiting anybody in the U.S.? How is this helping anybody? Sending $40 billion to Ukraine. We've got people here, veterans who need medical care, they're not getting it. We've got homeless people who need help. We have people with drug addictions who need help. Health problems for just your average American citizen, those that are working, who are having problems getting their treatments, medications, and so on that they need. Why didn't we use the $40 billion to help with that? Why didn't we take that $40 billion and invest it into helping ease some of the burden of this inflation or the debt that's mounting? I read something this morning where they were talking about inflation has not hit every socioeconomic status equally. While it's at like 8 point something average across the board, those are on the lower end of the economic spectrum. Lower middle class and below have been hit at 9.5% for their inflation. There was a news article that was talking about the price of gas is so expensive. Bank of America just released a report saying that the average American family is now using credit cards to pay for gas because they can't afford to pay for it with a debit card or out of their bank account or with cash. So if the American family is now using the credit cards to pay for gas so that they can get back and forth to work because they can't afford to pay for it at the time, when that bill comes due at the end of the month, they can only pay a certain percentage of it. Hopefully they're able to pay more than just the minimum. But still, whatever's left over, they're still having to pay interest on that, going right back to interest rates increasing. How long can a family, lower class, middle class, whatever, how long can they go and function paying for gas on a credit card that they can't completely pay off by the end of the month just so that they can drive to work? How long can we keep that up? I mean, think about it. Biden himself, I've talked about this before. Biden himself, I believe it was back in February. Hold on a minute. I'll do a reverse tracing like I did last time. It's easier. In April, we had the baby food shortage. March, we had 6 of our largest food processing and distribution plants either blow up or catch fire unexpectedly, shutting them down. That created food shortages. No, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Back in February, so yeah, I was right. Back in February, Biden got on the news doing a press conference and it said, expect food shortages. Here's your month-by-month step. February, president says expect food shortages. March, we already have transportation problems and certain food shortages, or struggles anyway, causing prices to go up. March, we have 6 of the largest food processing, food in general, they're not specified, but food processing and distribution plants are either blown up or burned down unexplainedly. Don't know if there's an investigation into it because it aired like 1 or 2 days and then the story was either disappeared or buried. April, you've got the baby formula shortage, which the government was supposed to help with, but there still hasn't been any help that I've seen. They claim that there has been, but I haven't seen it. You can say whatever you want. Action speaks louder than words. Now we have less corn available for food because it's being forced into gasoline production, which is also going to drive the price of gas up. Sorry, ethanol's not cheap. But like I said, 22 pounds of corn to make 1 gallon of gas. That's a lot of waste. It's a lot of waste. What do you do with the waste product for that? And they're still predicting more food shortages come the fall for lack of fertilizer and other things. So here's another tidbit. Wednesday night, I went out. Needed a little bit of social time. Decided to go to a sports bar. So I'm sitting there talking with 2 guys next to me, watching the news. Why the sports bar had news on, I'm not really sure, but there it was. Watching the news, reading the closed captions. And on the news, they're talking about this America's Summit and Meeting. Don't know what it is, hadn't heard of it before. But supposedly all the countries of North, Central, and South America were supposed to get together and try and problem solve. Didn't specify what the problems were, just said they were going to get together and problem solve. Funny thing is, Mexico and a lot of the other countries that have these caravans coming through to our southern border refused to show. And they said that they were not going to this summit because of the problem with our border being open. The other countries, Argentina, Venezuela, basically the dictatorships, authoritarian governments, did show up. And one of the things that the news was talking about was that these places are repositories for lithium and other elements that are used within these batteries for electric cars. And I'm sitting here thinking, are they sure they don't mean deposits? Like deposits and they're being mined there? So I went and looked it up. I looked up the definition of repository. And I also went and looked at some of this other stuff. Okay, definition of a repository according to the Webster Dictionary. It's a place you collect and store something. So most of these products and minerals are being mined out of Africa, Asia. Well, that's most of it. Africa and Asia are the 2 largest places. They're the 2 largest deposits. And they're being mined there. Why are these products and minerals being mined over in these countries just to be shipped to authoritarian dictatorships to be stored? Why not let the countries that are doing the manufacturing and the production store it, ship it straight to them, let them figure out how to store it, and the manufacturing companies can then use it as needed instead of having to reorder it, instead of having 2 or 3 middlemen. interesting prospect there, right? What's going on? So yeah, and then at some point Biden gets on, when Biden finally gets there, he gets on his little soapbox and talks about gun control again. All right, here's the other thing. 3 stories were running. They were switching back and forth between them. That was just like the last one or whatever. Obviously, they were showing the, I don't know, I guess hearings, testimonials, whatever you want to call it, for parents from Uvalde. Okay, I understand the concern. I get it. I really do. I work in the school system here. In fact, I was there one of the days that a student was actually arrested and charged because they were found to have a gun, which led to 2 other students being arrested. They didn't really explain that, although 2 days later they said it led to 2 other students being arrested. A gun on school campus. So yeah, I get it. Trust me, I do. Of course, I didn't know anything about it or find out about it until the day after when my students were talking about it. Still not paying a whole lot of attention to the news. I got more important things to do. So I get it. But they want to, well, technically you could say they want to do whatever it is that they want to do. But it kind of seems like the news story that's being floated is one side says more restrictions and the other side says that those wanting more restrictions are actually trying to take away your guns. I'm kind of leaning in that direction, that they, at least some of them, want to completely take away people's guns, the Second Amendment. They've just continued chipping away at it. During these hearings, the House passed a bill to ban high-capacity magazines. What's a high-capacity magazine? Nobody has actually really sat down and defined that for me. If you go and you buy a repeating rifle, semi-automatic, you pull the trigger once, fires one round, pull the trigger again, fires another round, so on. You buy a rifle, or even a handgun, an automatic handgun. You have automatics and you have revolvers. And well, you can still find muzzle loaders too. But anyway. These come with magazines that hold between 15 and 30 rounds. Your average 9mm, used by police, law enforcement, and federal agencies, usually holds 20-30 rounds. That's standard. That's not high capacity. That's your standard. That's your starting point. So what are they classifying high capacity magazines? Now, supposedly during this debate, they wanted guns to have magazines that only hold 7 or 8 rounds. The other discussion was red flag laws. Now, supposedly the House passed that one as well. I don't know. And that's what some people were saying the next day. Other people were saying that it was still supposed to be up for vote. I don't know. From what I understand, back in 2019 or 2020, red flag laws were already struck down as being unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And that was a case that came out of New York. So now there's potential for a federal red flag law, which has already been shown to have abuse or be abused, consistently abused, between neighbors who don't like each other, ex-significant others. People seem to enjoy citing ex-girlfriends or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure ex-boyfriends do it as well. It's not a one-sided deal. And there's a lot of women who are shooting enthusiasts, so it might actually be more women than men, to be perfectly honest. A lot of women, especially single women, want to have a gun to protect themselves if somebody breaks in. So if it's already been struck down by the Supreme Court and ruled as unconstitutional in relation to New York, because it was the federal Supreme Court that did it, that ruling affects the entire 50 states of the United States of America. It's unconstitutional. And yet, here we are with the Fed, Congress, trying to pass an unconstitutional bill again. Guys, like I said, I get it. I really do. Violence in schools is a problem. 2 weeks before school got out, I ended up helping break up a fight in the hallway. I'm partially disabled, don't walk very well, have a cane, have 2 electronic devices on one of my legs, and I helped break up a fight between one teacher grabbing the bigger student, which really wasn't that much bigger than the other one, and I grabbed the other one. As that one continued to resist and try to do whatever, I ended up putting an arm bar on him and pressing him against the wall. Administrators came over, took the students into separate places, dealt with the situation after that, whatever. I believe both of them were suspended. I'm not entirely sure. Nobody seems to know what the fight was about. I guess it doesn't really matter. You know, as I'm sitting there in the hallway during the school year, I constantly hear kids in my classroom as well as in the halls talking about beating each other up, slapping each other. I mean, these guys talk more violence than we did growing up. And I was out there and I've asked them about it. I'm like, why are you guys so violent? I thought my generation was violent. And then I sit here and I listen to you guys talk. It's pretty disconcerting. So, I mean, breaking up the fight, I got a few scratches on my elbow and whatnot. No big deal. I was really tired after that, though. I had trouble walking because I had to hold the kid there for so long. And then I kind of hate giving possible increased concerns or whatever for those who do want to ban guns, but we've had so many drive-bys the end of the school year this year. It's like every day in the news there was some sort of a story about a drive-by at a graduation ceremony or a graduation party indiscriminately being fired into the crowd. We've never had this many drive-bys. Never. Now, within the last 2-3 years, well, actually over the last probably 10 years, we've had a lot of people moving into the state, more often than not for work. But over the last two years, almost 3 years, it's been significantly increased, probably 3-4 times as many as it has been in the past. Some of it has to do with people trying to escape or get away from, I guess, draconian lockdown measures or whatnot. I mean, from what I hear on social media, there's still certain cities and towns that are on lockdowns for whatever reason and people can't go to work. I hope not. It's possible. I don't know. There's other people that are leaving the large cities, inner cities and large cities, because of all the violence going on there. And so they're coming places like here. Well, majority of them that are doing these moves are parents with kids. Unless they're coming here for work, the majority are parents who are coming here with kids, many times older kids, and they're trying to get their kids out of bad situations so that they might have a good shot at life. Problem is, they're bringing those problems with them. That's my theory on it. That's a theory. Hadn't been tested. Don't really have a way to test it. But, you know, you can kind of sort of go do research on sociology and sociological and migration in between the states and whatnot. That would probably give me the beginnings of confirmation or denial. Denial's not the right word. Proving or disproving, although it wouldn't be confirmed proof. It would only be the beginnings of, to either support or not support that theory. And the problem is most of those studies would only have been released within the last year or two, because it usually takes a while to collect the data and process it. So even the most recent would be somewhat out of date. And so people are up in arms over this 2A situation all over again. I kind of want to say it's, I don't know, mass shooting season or whatnot. It does seem seasonal, but it seems later in the year this year than in years past. Because years past, it was usually somewhat middle-ish of the year. This year, most of it, at least on our side, has been the end of the school year. Yep, got flies. Talking about the gun control kind of goes off to the Brett Kavanaugh situation from Wednesday night. I guess it was early Wednesday morning, but either way, it's kind of all over the place Wednesday night. Like I said, while I was sitting at the bar drinking my orange juice. Sorry, recovering alcoholic. Gotta watch the drinking. Don't start. And since I'm a binge drinker, don't have the first one, don't have an issue. I just needed to get out and see people. But they talked about the guy having zip ties or zip cuffs or whatever. Those can be fun. Sorry, I used to work law enforcement. Zip cuffs, a knife, possibly rope, I'm not sure, and a Glock 19. They labeled a tactical knife, and I've been asking the question, what are they calling a tactical knife? I got a pretty good idea what a tactical knife is from my time in service. But I'm wondering what they're calling a tactical knife. Wondering if he just had a hunting knife or something. But that night, the whole rhetoric related to that situation was piggybacking the need for more gun control, more laws, even though the guy turned himself in. After that, the story kind of got buried somewhat. There's still a few people that are talking about it. But anyway, the guy called and turned himself in, talked about, supposedly it was originally tallied as a murder-suicide attempt. He was going to kill the judge and then kill himself. Well, before this took place, there had been protests in front of Kavanaugh's house. Within 2 to 3 hours after this guy's arrest, the protesters were back protesting in front of Kavanaugh's house. The guy said that he was there both over the leaked information of Roe v. Wade being revisited and supposedly stricter gun laws, or needing stricter gun laws, gun violence, or I don't know, something along those lines. But the guy was turning himself into another statistic of attempted gun violence, the thing that he was afraid of and whatnot. Okay. Yeah, anyway. There's just so many jokes there. But the thing that everybody's forgetting is that protesting in front of a Supreme Court justice's residence is illegal. It's already illegal. But we have several congressmen and representatives who are encouraging this. What's his name? Chuck Schumer got on the news and was like, I have protesters in front of my house almost all the time. Okay, that's fine. They're allowed to be at your house. There is no law that says they can't be in front of your house voicing their concerns. There is a federal statute and mandate stating they cannot protest in front of Supreme Court justices' houses. These are not positions that are elected. These are positions that are appointed, and these people are supposed to rule according to the Constitution and what it says. They're supposed to interpret constitutional law. And so they're not supposed to be influenced by mass crowd, whatever, public opinion. That's not supposed to have any bearing on it. Granted, it does. You can actually go back and look at a lot of the cases that the Supreme Court chose to hear, as well as their rulings. And there are several times where they talked about society's point of view had changed, and so rulings were adjusted or changed or whatever. But that's not exactly how it's supposed to go. But nobody's sitting here having the authorities come in and arrest these people who are breaking the law. In fact, they're encouraging it. They're doing the exact opposite. So now you have a certain sect of the populace who is being encouraged by their political representatives to break the law. They are actually going out and breaking the law. Guys, we've got a double standard on the law. We've got two different justice systems. Some are arguing that it's divided among wealth. Others are arguing that it is now divided among political parties. Either way, it's wrong. It's supposed to be the law is the law is the law, and what's bad for one person is bad for another and bad for another. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation, religious beliefs, color of your skin, or any of that, or political affiliation. Doesn't matter. If it's wrong for one person to do it, then it's wrong for the other person to do it. It's that simple. Alright, I gotta cut this short. The thunder's getting worse and Abby's not liking it, so. Short, yeah, it's almost 40 minutes. This was supposed to be like 15, 20 minutes. Anyway. So yeah. Just things for you guys to think about. Keep in mind, you know, trying to think of the comedian's name. Anyway, comedian once said, doubt everything. Doubt what you hear, doubt what you read, and doubt what you're told or whatnot. And go and research it and find out for yourself. Question everything. That's the exact words he said. Question everything, especially what you're being told. I recommend you do it. Question everything. I do. We need to find common ground, and we need to find some kind of unity. There's a lot of people who think that we are headed towards a civil war, and they might be right. According to the results of, I want to say it was a survey published by the Washington Post sometime last week, I want to say Wednesday of last week, not this past week, but the week before that. The week before the Kavanaugh murder-suicide thing. Washington Post did a survey where they found that 40% of young Democrat males support violence and assassination of political opponents, I guess. I don't know. Political assassinations. Now, the interesting thing is that for those same demographics, the second highest were Republican, in the same age group, Republican females, over 30%, approximately a third of them, also agreed with and supported the idea of political assassinations for I guess election people or whatnot. Candidates. We're not talking about political assassinations overseas. We're talking about political assassinations here in the U.S. for opposing viewpoints and differences of opinion. A third of young female Republicans support it. 30+%. 40% of young Democrat men support it. These are not good things. These are not good things at all. This is actually a sign, and now you got to take it with a grain of salt coming from the Washington Post. Not to mention the fact they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot by publishing that. But that just says violence is going to increase. And people wonder why there's so many people, I guess, in America that are worried about their gun rights. Out in Michigan, there was a story, I believe yesterday. One of the sheriffs, in an interview, made the statement that they have already gone through, with the rise in gas prices, they've already gone through their fuel budget for the year. And they're still several months away before, in his words, before the budget resets. So he is now telling his deputies to handle all 911 calls that can be handled by phone, to handle them by phone instead of driving out to the scene. When your law enforcement, your firefighters, and your EMS cannot afford to drive to the scene when you call them for help because of soaring gas prices and inflation, we are in a really bad situation. When the police cannot come to help you, you better have a way to defend yourself. That's all I got. Think about it. Until next time, you guys watch your six.